is a gold dirt road to old. Out of nothing, got a deed to the land, but it ain't my ground. This is God's country. We pray for rain and thank Him when it's falling, 'cause it brings a grain. Money, we put it back in the plate. I guess that's why they call it God's country. I saw the light in the sunrise, sitting back in the 40 on a muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of the being found, Dixie whistle in the wind that'll get you heaven bound. Devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country. We turn to dirt and work until the week's done. We take a break and break bread on Sunday, then do it all again, 'cause we're proud to be from God's country. I saw the light in the sunrise, sitting back in the 40 on a muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of the big foundation, whistle in the wind that'll get you heaven bound. Devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. Oh my God! This is God's country. I don't care what my headstone reads or what kind of plywood box they end up in. When it's my time, leave me 6 feet deep in God's country.
Small town Cuba, located in the Allegheny Mountains of western New York. Known for its amazing cheese factory and awesome views of the mountains, and Cuba Lake, where there's some awesome fishing. What's also unique is the Cuba-Rushford Central School District's outdoor program. What is CRCS Outdoors? We'll take a look.
Hey, Scott Jordan with CRCS Outdoors. Welcome to Season 10.
Yeah, Hunter.
Welcome to CRCS Outdoors, making a difference one young hunter at a time.
Well, so first of all, I went to school. I graduated from here, so this is my hometown, which is part of the reason why I put so much effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
And my entire family was involved in education, going all the way back to in the 1800s. So very important to me to, give back. But I mean, as you look at this marlin, this was caught by a gentleman, and it was actually hanging downtown in a shop. And so when you were little and you walked by and you could see something like that, and you're like, well, I'm gonna do something like that someday, you know what I mean? And the crazy thing is that when the gentleman passed away, his wife said, "You want to fish?" And so I was like, "Oh, you talking about the marlin?" "Oh yeah." And so I've got a spot for it, and that's kind of how he got there. But I became a fisheries biologist for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and before that I actually was I worked with bald eagles in a hacking program in New York with the Endangered Species Unit. So being a biologist, and I also did a lot with wildlife, and then in 1989 the Exxon Valdez oil spill hit, and that was my district, so I worked with about every animal in the state, and that just eventually led to family wanted me home. So years later I came home, and there's not much call for a sockeye salmon biologist. So the things that I've done with my kids are what scientists do in the field, biologists, both for fisheries and wildlife. And I wanted kids to have an opportunity, and as you know, rural students don't get them. Kids up near Buffalo and Rochester can get internships. We have nothing. So providing them with an avenue that is what they're interested in, and then to have them be able to do and study exactly what they want to study, then they put their heart and soul into it. And so all of the things that you're seeing on our grounds, students helped in that process, but also community members and the like. So a building like this was done in the memory of the Applebee's, and so getting people started with a project like this, like how do you build a log home on your grounds, I certainly know all the shortcuts to be able to do that. And the first thing that we built was the hatchery. So we started Fish and Wildlife in 1993. The hatchery was completed in 96. This was completed in 2000. The deer facility was completed in 2012. The turkey facility was just last year. We have a 1 acre pond, and we started with plankton, and then we grew paddlefish. So there's 2 6-footers out there swimming around, which I enjoyed, with the kids, because we actually do scuba diving here also. And then, as you see, some of my friends here, we do a thing called the lock-in, where we lock the kids in, middle school kids, in overnight. And we actually have done a lot of these mounts in this building during the lock-in. Then we reclaimed the wetlands with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, so that I had more breeding grounds for ducks and geese. So I like to think that we produce as many ducks and geese as my students shoot. Then, for the rest of the property, we have walking trails and things. It kind of just depends on what the kids are interested in. We raise brook trout, aside from, we used to do paddlefish, we don't anymore, but we've always raised brook trout, with the idea being, one, it's a state fish, but two, they're pretty weeny. So if we can raise brook trout, we can raise anything. And going from there, then each and every year, like if you look at what we do, I set things up so students can hunt and fish. So, all year long, we're doing adventures that way. And quite a few of them are local. So we do local deer hunts, turkey hunts, goose hunts, duck hunts, that kind of stuff. But then we went international. So this year was supposed to be my 17th year going to New Zealand, taking kids to that. So I've taken 125 kids to New Zealand, hunting red stag. Part of the reason I started that was because of our hunting age here. So the students couldn't hunt a deer here, but I could take them to New Zealand and they could shoot a red stag. So New York has finally just lowered the hunting age to where it should be. Then we've gone to South Africa hunting. We're actually going back to South Africa to work with white rhinos and then do a little hunting. But I also do, once in a while, I'll do a non-hunting or fishing trip. That's hard for me. And we've done Scotland, Ireland, England. We've been to Australia. What else are we working on? Well, we had a trip scheduled for the pyramids, and so we got to go next Easter now. But things like that. And then our fishing trips. So I've done Alaska 15 times, and taken students halibut fishing, salmon shark fishing, salmon fishing. So we're always doing opportunities like that. Then in the winter, we either go to Texas to go deer hunting, or we go to Florida and do alligator hunting. and that's a hoot and a half. And then spring is turkey season, so I've been up since 2 this morning, so it's kind of a long day. Taking kids turkey hunting before school, and then, you know, once we get into June, we start doing some Lake Ontario fishing trips, maybe a couple of muskie trips, and so it's kind of never ending. And we'll have to take a look, because over there I actually have, the top one is a turkey capture net, the bottom one is a deer capture net. So right on campus here, we have about 100 acres, 32 of those are enclosed. So we do studies on my deer in the deer facility, but we also have wild deer that we shoot rocket nets over, and we capture them, then we collar them so we can track wild deer. We've done that with turkeys. Amazing. One year we caught 7 jakes, and one of those jakes traveled 7 miles. So,
Wow.
you know, just things like that where people don't understand how far deer or turkey move. We captured a mother, and she actually had 3 yearling bucks, and we put collars on those bucks, and you do know that deer will kick their males out. And we actually recorded the day that she kicked them out. They went all the way to Friendship, which from here straight line distance is 7 miles. And one of them got hit in the road, and the next day the other 2 came back and were by the baseball field. So, you know, some things are just anecdotal, but other things are actual research. So we do rut studies, and that's another part, and that's what I wrote my master's on, is having kids actually do research, because honestly, they don't know enough to bias the data. You tell them what to do, and they do it, and they'll do it right, as long as you give them the guidelines, and that's the important part, you know. So fisheries and wildlife is my life. This is where it's been at, and for a lot of my students, this is what they're interested in, so that's what I try to bring them. I've also had people tell me, right, that your odor doesn't matter that much. I'm telling you right now, the number one thing that deer are good at is smell, right? And all you got to do is look at their face, and you know that. A deer on a normal day with decent humidity can smell you up to a quarter mile away. So there's deer taking off and running away from you that you never saw nor heard. They smell you, right? How many of you have a deer app on your phone? Does your deer app show your scent cone? Because you'll have people, your scent cone, it usually gives you a window like this, right? It's saying your scent is going to blow into this space. So here's your problem, right? People go and say, I wash my clothes, I do this, I buy the most expensive stuff, I got this carrier, I plug it in, it's ozoning my stuff. You breathe. Research that we do on the rut will be going national, so we've been partnering hopefully with Larry Weishuhn and several ranches in Texas, but this is one of our big boys. He actually got beat, see that break there, by this guy who's a year younger, but took him out. He's always had an attitude, that dude. Benny job? Yeah, that's a Benny job. So, welcome to our park. But kind of like Jurassic Park, you may not see anything like that. Yeah.
So how much land is here? How much acreage you got here?
We got 32 acres enclosed. I wrote a grant to get this. My students operate the cameras, and then so we're tracking the rut, and then we compare it to deer and deer hunting. Their rut calendar, and so what we're trying to do is see what we have here compared to what's going on in the skeleton crew. And these are our resident goldfish, but we usually have like a hellbender in that tank, bullheads, local fish in these two tanks. Our breeding tanks are downstairs. That's kind of our equipment room. So for my programs, like every one of the facilities has to have a manager, so there's a person in charge. Kid might have worked 3 years to get that position, and then they have 10 or so students underneath them working, and that's the whole idea. So when I get called on references, I know what the kid was like as far as a worker, I know what they're like as a team member, and I know what they're like as a leader, especially when we've got stuff to do, you know. And just like with fish here, I mean, those fish's lives are at stake at how well my students do their job, so they take it seriously, and you know, that works out well. Yep. Take this inside. What? What? You got any more eggs for me? You gotta let me know. Hi. So we built this facility so that kids had the opportunity to hear these noises, because if they hunt, a lot of times, right, you don't hear that spitting and drumming, they're shooting first. He's not old enough yet to feel it in your chest, you know, he's getting there, but. Haven't even looked at your spurs. How you coming? You got something? Your beard's kind of worthless. Oh, you're getting there. I don't know if we talked about, we compete in the Envirothon.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so one of the proudest things that I do is the Envirothon. So we've got 15 top 10 finishes in New York, and you know, kids get to compete in forestry, soils, aquatics, wildlife, and a current topic that changes every year depending on the state. So that's a huge deal for me, is the kids have to study for that.
How can other schools get this program incorporated into their systems?
Well, the hard thing is I don't have a cookie cutter curriculum that I can just pass out. One of the things is to, you know, actually get some data back on your region as to what people are interested in. I actually did a survey when I first started, and I said, give me 35 different places on earth you want to go, and give me 35 things that you'd want to do. And number one was go to Alaska. Number two was New Zealand, which at the time there was Lord of the Rings stuff, I'll give you that. And the number one thing was big game hunting, and number two was fishing. So that's pretty much driven me the entire time that I've been teaching, you know. So and kids will come to me. So I had one kid who was just dying to shoot a black bear, and it took us 3 years to get it set up, but we finally went and he got to shoot a bear. And so, you know, kids oftentimes are the driving force, but you've got to have an administration that's going to allow it to happen. So if you don't have support of the principals and the superintendent, it's not happening. And the first thing I hear out of most people's mouths is liability, right? We just, you know, we can't do that. I mean, I had, this month we've had 3 kids running a chainsaw. How many schools would allow that, you know? So we had a windstorm, and you'll see some of the damage that we have around here. So we're still cutting, and we had a building behind us that got partially crushed, so we're fixing. But we're also we do all of our own maintenance, and with this whole last year being COVID, a lot of stuff got neglected. Didn't, what I couldn't do, and so it's taken us most of this year to get back up to speed. Yeah.
Also, where are some of your students at today as a result of this program?
Awesome question. So I've got kids working across the country, and it's amazing. So some of the kids that especially did some of the trapping studies and had that on their resume. So I've got a young man who's actually a biologist in Maine, and he's in charge of moose research. So he's a biologist there. I've got a graduate student right now in Wisconsin that is specializing in waterfowl, but especially wood ducks. I've had kids who were jumping out of helicopters in Wyoming and Colorado, capturing mule deer. I've got a kid who's a bird specialist, and he has been working with endangered birds in Hawaii. I've got a kid right now who's got a degree in fisheries and engineering, so he's going to write his own ticket, and he's in Alaska. I've got another kid in Alaska who's a conservation officer, and let's just say that he's pulling down six figures, and he's got 2 planes, and he can go hunting when he wants. So, not everything's about money. There's success in different ways. But some of my kids, like one of them, just got promoted. He is in charge of finance for a lot of the banks in the eastern U.S., and so he just was featured on Times Square. So some of those things, they're important too. My goal was not to just get everybody into fish and wildlife, but if they're educated about it, then they are going to vote the right way, and they're going to support us, and then hunting and fishing will be here to stay. And if we don't do our part and take kids out hunting and fishing, and we lose those percentages, we're eventually going to lose our voice, and bad things will happen. Yeah. Come here. Come up here. They do not have it. Their favorite thing is a banana. Really? Yeah.
It was because of this one interview, this opportunity, that has made me a better outdoorsman, TV host, and cameraman. Thank you, Scott.
Primitive Patriot Outdoors.